What we'll be discussing today is the Dedeco silicon rubber polishers. It's not the only silicon rubber polishers we have, but we're just going to focus on this particular brand for this webinar. The silicon rubber polishers are basically small rotary polishers, and they come in a range of profiles and a range of grits. So what we'll go through today is some slides on each of the profiles and discuss some of the uses of the profiles. We'll go through the grits and discuss when you might use those particular grits. And we'll also have a few videos on the uses of each of those profiles and grits, how you can use them. It's not the answer for everything, but it is definitely a step forward in using modern polishing compounds, and you'll find it very interesting. There are some tips and tricks at the end as well, some ideas on how you can use these that you mightn't have thought of. So we'll get into the slide. We'll be discussing the slides. On the videos, I've actually done the audio at the same time. I just get camera shy, so it's more appropriate. But if you have any questions, please type them in and let us know, and we can pause at any time and go through and answer those as we can, if we can. So I'll just start the slide for you and share and click. That's the intro. Now, one of the things with the silicon polishers, they are silicon-based compound, so they'll have very fine particles when you're using them. Please use the appropriate PPE or the personal protective equipment. So that includes the safety glasses. Make sure the safety glasses encapsulate around the side of the eyes. You don't want to turn your head and get any specks into your eyes. And a P1 dust mask. So it's got to be a proper dust mask. Long term, you don't want this stuff in your lungs. It's like all your polishing, you need to follow the appropriate safety. Having done that, you can hook in very well. One of the other things to be aware of, the polishers can generate a little bit of heat. So unlike your Rouge and your Triple E, it builds up the heat quite quickly. If you're aware of that, not a problem. If you're doing a bit of a session, consider getting some slim gloves, leather gloves, and some finger tape. You can get protective finger tape to offset that, and it works quite well. Otherwise, you just pause your polishing, let it cool a bit, and keep going. So some of the tools these are used for, as they're a rotary polisher, you use them with either a micromotor, which is the Station Strong there pictured on the left, or a flex drive, which has the motor at the top and a physical connection down to the bottom. Both have their pros and cons. The flex drive tends to have a bit more torque on there. The micromotor is actually more flexible in the handpiece, better speed control, and a lot quieter if you're trying to polish at 10 o'clock at night, as my wife tells me. They're not the only ones. They're the ones that we use. If you're using retail ones from the hardware store, etc., just be aware some of those tend to be high speed and low torque, which means they don't have enough grunt sometimes for the polishing and they load down, and the speed tends to be a bit excessive. So with the silicon polishers, that generates the heat very quickly. So just be aware of those. They're not always the best ones, the cheap ones you get from the hardware, because of that. So consider getting a better quality one. The profiles. So there's a number of different profiles. We'll start with the barrel. So the barrel profile is quite wide. So that's good for larger areas and inside ring shanks, for example. So if you've just soldered a ring shank together and you're cleaning up the scratches in your solder, you could use the coarse one on there and it will very quickly clean that up. You can use it on the outside curve as well. You just have to be aware that you can't sit it in one spot because it will give a little scalloping or rippling effect. The same thing would happen if you push hard too. So let the tool do the work. That's the way to do it. And keep the tool moving down the shank. Now that's in a video we'll show you later as well. So the grits we have in each of these profiles is a coarse grit, which is the white one, a medium grit, which is the black one, a fine grit, which is the blue one you can see there, and an extra fine. The coarse will move metal, the medium will move metal and polish as well, the fine mostly polishing, and the extra fine is your final high gloss finish. The next profile we look at the silicon wheels is the square edge. Now, it's not shown here, but you need to mount this onto a mandrel, and there's a screw mandrel that goes into this so you can put it into your flex drive. It's great for cleaning up bezels and polishing up bezels, cleaning up the solder around the edges. You can use it for tidying up claws post-setting. If you want to get a bit creative, you can use the coarse square edge and put it on an angle and use the V, the corner of it, and you can cut decorative edges around a pendant base, for example, where you can do a little bit of sculpting around the bezel itself, if you like, and then come back after that with a fine polish to tidy it up again. So you can actually cut metal and polish at the same time using the course in all these profiles. The next one is the knife edge. Now, the knife edge is good for cleaning up in join areas. So we have two bits of metal coming together, that corner piece. Sometimes you just can't get in with a file to clean it up properly. You can use a knife edge to do that. You can also change the profile of your knife edge. So if you find it's a little bit too sharp, you want it wider, what you can do is run this on an old file, not your best file, an old file, and it'll widen the girdle, if you like, of that knife edge and give you a broader edge. If it's not fine enough, you can do the opposite and taper it down. So that works excellent in the corners. Normally use it around the claws joints, so where you put your claws onto your gallery. That little join there, we can clean up any excess solder and do the polish. Post-setting, it works really well. Any tool marks you have, you can come back and use these to tidy up tool marks after your setting. Again, the plus for the silicone wheels is you don't need to do your ultrasonic cleaning. After this, there's no compound that really adheres to your piece with this. So if you haven't got an ultrasonic cleaner, you can use these to do your polishing. Another thing with a knife edge that I tend to use the knife edge a lot for is I make a lot of repoussé tools and stippling tools are also texturing tools. So I use the coarse knife edge to cut decorative lines in the end of some tool steel, and I'll make a stamp basically that way. So it cuts and polishes in one go. You can get a bit creative too. Being a curve, you can arc it around, so it doesn't have to be straight lines. So you can arc a rebate or a curve or a cut line using these wheels as well. The other profile there is the bullet profile. That is good for cleaning up in inside settings, for example, if you had a bezel setting or a claw setting that you couldn't quite get in the center of, you can use that to get into the center to clean up your solder and polish as well. So coarse as your white, that would remove metal. And if you're just shining it up, you can use the pink, which is your ultra fine. The other thing you can do too is use the side of this, and mention scalloping and decorative edges. You can use that round profile to give you a scallop around edges of pendants and settings as well. So you can actually cut those and polish those in one pass. Okay. The next profile we have is the pinpoint, very similar to the bullet. You've just got a bit extra access. So if you find recesses where you want to polish and come in, you can push it in, and if you leave it there for a little bit, it'll match the profile of the piece you're trying to polish too. So be aware of that. You can shape these even more to match what you're doing. One of these things I use quite often for ball texture. So I'll get a ball burr and I'll make little recessed dimples in a piece, and I can come back quickly and polish them up without the need for getting onto the polisher and ultrasonic cleaner. So the next profile is the 2mm pins. You can see the mandrel that they mount into there. Same grits as the others, coarse, medium, fine, extra fine. You can profile these as well. So if it's not quite sharp enough, you can run it on an old file to get a point, and that can gain you access into some really tight spots. So if you're doing a bit of piercing and you've got some larger access holes in the piercing, you can come through and you can clean up your saw blade marks on your piercing. Larger engraving areas too. So the other thing I've used this for is where I've done some quite large engraving, and I can profile these to a point, and then I can come back and I can polish that up a little bit more and dress it up a little bit more to get a better shine. So with the grits again, so we have the coarse, and as I've said, the coarse moves metal and slightly polishes. The medium will move metal, gives a better shine. The fine, which is the blue there, is a bright polish. And your final polish is the bright, that's the pink, is the ultra. The pink will not move metal. Okay, so we don't try and move metal with that. You'll just chew up the pin if you try that. Now I should have the mandrel, and that's the mandrel we use for the unmounted wheels. So that's the square edge and your knife edge wheels. The barrel's already mounted, so we don't need it for that. The pin polisher mandrel, I've doubled up on that. Apologise for that. We'll just move forward. Okay. So what we're going to do is a little demo here on the barrel profile. Now I'm using the coarse grit on this one to move metal. So a lot of times you would use this on cast pieces because it's a very quick cleanup. And then you can come back with a finer grit barrel, like a medium and a fine, and do your polish. Very, very quick. So I'll just run this video for you. It's lucky if it goes for a minute. And if you have any questions at that time, we can double check then. Just hold to. There we go. So the first silicon wheel we'll demonstrate is the barrel, in particular the white coarse barrel. That is very useful for cleaning up castings. As you can see, you get milky pitting post casting, so you need to clean that up. And it's a very quick, even method to do that. So we'll just demonstrate that. You can see the pitting on that one. And this is quite quick. Now remember, it is silicon, so this will get a little bit hot. So you can see it's shine up there. Just keep it even. So watch your angles. So remember to flip it over as well, so you're not biasing one direction or another. And you can see it slowly coming up. This is far easier than using emery and a lot quicker. Okay. So that's the white barrel. You can also use the white barrel on outside curves. Just remember to keep it moving. You can't leave it sitting in one spot. So for this particular, we can come through. Remember, this is a coarse finish. This is not your final finish, but this helps the process a lot quicker. Through there. The next slide is on the square edge profile. Now, this is not my video because it's not my big fat hand in the way. So I've taken this off the YouTube, and there's a little section in that that's appropriate. Now, what they're doing is a square edge using a coarse grit, and it's for smoothing out a formed copper pattern. So you hammer forge the piece instead of planishing. So planishing where you hammer back and try and make that piece ultra smooth after forming. This is another way. So you can actually remove the metal and finalize that planishing and get a very smooth finish. So I'll just run that for you. So you can see the hammered texture on there. Now, if you keep planishing, eventually you'll get that out, but this is a quicker way to do it. So he's using the coarse there to actually remove the metal, and it moves it very quickly. You would probably come back after that and polish. May not polish with a wheel, you might polish with some Blue Hubble or Triple E or something. So we'll do that again. So this is the textured or hammered formed piece. So rather than planish the whole thing, you can actually smooth it out quite quickly with the coarse square wheel. You could use a barrel as well on this. Barrel being wider, you might not get all the angles you want. And then you'll probably follow this up with a polish. May not use the polishing wheels to do the final polish. You might go back to the old school and use your polishing compounds to cover the entire piece quite quickly. But this is a good way to remove dimples from forming as well. Okay. Now this one's me because it's my ugly hands there. So we're going to use the square edge profile on a fine grit. So this is going to polish. It's not going to move a lot of metal. You will get fine scratches out, but it won't cut the metal as such. So the next profile is the square profile. and I've picked the blue, which is the fine here. And again, on a casting piece, we can get in and do a bit of shine and tidy up here. The plus for the silicon wheel is we don't need to put this back into an ultrasonic cleaner post this. There's no polishing compound adhering to the piece, so we're right there. Having said that, if you are plating, you still need to follow your proper cleaning process for plating. So we've got a little bit of a mark there, a little bit of scratch in the centre of this piece here. So you can say that's happened during setting, for example. Rather than polish the whole piece again, you can quickly come back with a square profile. Just match the profile angle to the piece. And you can see that's removed the scratch without the need for harsh polishing and emery, etc. So as you can see from that, it's very quick to do. Old school method would be to fine emery back those scratches and then to repolish with your Tripoli equivalent and your Rouge equivalent, ultrasonic cleaning in between. So if you've set a stone that isn't conducive to going into an ultrasonic, that's a really good way to clean up post-setting for you. So next slide. So the knife edge. So as I said with the knife edge, you can actually use the coarse as well to cut. It's one of my favourite ones for creating decorative edges, for texturing pieces, and for making stippling tools. But the other side of it, if you use the fine, it's a very good way to clean up your joints. Okay, the next profile we're demonstrating is the knife edge. Now the knife edge is quite sharp. If it is too fine for you, you can blunten it by running it onto a file, an old file. And if you want it finer again, you can sharpen it up on that same file to regain your edge. So this comes in handy for getting into areas. So for example, this piece here with the bezel has been soldered on. If you had some cleanup to do, a little bit of solder there, you can come in right on the very corner of this piece here and right into the edge there to clean away that solder. Just keep it moving though, don't leave it in one spot. And that will help clean up the solder joints, for example, on sharp edges. Similar to every other setting you do, so you want to redefine the edge, you can come back in here and tidy that up. Just keep it moving, don't sit in one spot, and that will help tidy up your corners. So those polishing knife edges are very handy in that you can actually change your profiles, even with the square wheel. Hopefully everyone's still there. I've just got a message.
Yeah. So Bill, I do have a question from Dean.
Yes, certainly.
Do you have a preferred rotation or rotation direction?
Right.
Yeah, rotation direction.
Good question. So the plus with a lot of the professional micromotors and flex drives is that you can change the direction, which you don't get those choices with your commercial ones, like Bunnings or Mitre 10 or whatever. Preferred direction is to have the wheel spinning away from you. So the bottom of the wheel spinning away from you. That way, any particles that come up are actually going away from you, not into your lap. So depending if you're left-handed or right-handed, depends which direction you get it to rotate. So I'm just trying to think which way that is. So counterclockwise. I normally have mine going counterclockwise for polishing. Just remember to put it back to forward or clockwise for drilling. Otherwise, you won't drill very far. And next, any other questions on that one?
That's it for the moment.
Okay, so now we're going to go through the bullet profile, and I'm not showing fine grit up there, but I'm actually demonstrating with a coarse, so I apologise for that. But there will be a second one with the fine after this. So a bit of editing to do. The next profile is a bullet. The bullet comes in handy for cavities and recesses. So there's a few applications for this. So for example, a cast ring, to quickly get on the inside cavity we created there for an oval stone and tidy it up. You can use the oval one. I'm using a coarse one in this case because this is directly out of casting. So it's going to help me square the edges up as you go through. and tidy the whole thing up. You can actually use this to give you a chamfer. So if you wanted to, for example, do a comfort fit, you could come back through and soften the edges here to give you a comfort fit. There we go. So anywhere you've got like an oval cavity where you can get those into to clean up, you can polish quite well. So if you've got clear stones, for example, we've got really clear stones you can see right through. You want the base of your setting to be in a really good state, really high finish, tidy, no scratches, because you're going to see them. So you want that good finish all the way through your piece for the clear stones. So that's a good way to get in and tidy them up. Next one. So back on the bullet again, not everything has to be a ring or a pendant. So what I've got here is a repoussé piece in the process of making. So if anyone's ever seen Lord of the Rings and Riders of Rohan, that's what we're attempting to do on that repoussé piece. But we show you how to tidy up some scratches and marks on that. So still with the bullet profile, but we're now onto a fine medium compound, which is the blue. In this wire work setting, for example, it is a bit difficult to get in any other method, so this bullet can get in and clean up your joint and even give you a bit of a sham with the setting of the stone. Again, quite easy. Okay, just track it through and that will polish the inside of your setting. It will also soften the edge. The other thing you can do with the bullets and the points is, for example, chasing repoussé. So on this chasing repoussé part that's still in progress, you can see there's some scratches coming through here. So what we can do is start removing some of those scratches in preparation for finishing. You could sit there with emery, but this is a hell of a lot quicker. If you find some of the scratches aren't moving, what you can do is go back a grit. So there's still some scratches in here. So we can go back a grit to the medium, which is the black one. And I'm holding this a bit awkward just so you guys can see. So I normally hold it this way. Keep it moving again, round, and that'll start to clear out the scratches that are there. And then we can come back over with a finer polish. Just there. Try not to do this with the coarse because it does move a lot of metal. So you're better off starting fine, and then if it's not working, go back a step. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of powder coming off. This is silicone-based polish, so make sure you wear the appropriate PPE, so a mask and glasses when you do all this. There we go. So as you can see, that is relatively quick process. Now, if you had to do that with your emery, you'd be going through coarse emery again, trying to get access into the recesses, then your fine emery, and then eventually polish again. So you can bypass a lot of those steps and get better, quicker access with the silicone polishes. Having said that, a very large surface area, you're probably still better off trying to do yellow brill or something like that as a polish, which is a cutting polish. But these are fantastic for your smaller pieces, very, very quick. And pinpoint.
Just some feedback for you there, Bill.
Yes.
So Dean had to leave the meeting, but he said thanks very much for the presentation. He's been using the silicone rubbers for a while, and he appreciates the tips to get better use and application. So, yeah, thanks, Dean.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Dean. A lot of this too is to inspire you. These are only a few of the uses. The rain's coming down quite heavy now. So be a bit creative. Have a think where you might be able to use some of these things. Have a think that, okay, I can change the profile of a piece. Your square edge wheels, for example, you can change the shape of them. So there's been occasions where I've wanted a rounded edge, so I've deliberately sat there, profiled it to a round edge so that I can polish out the cavity of a channel setting, for example, that I've made, or a hinge recess. So you can get flexible with it. So it's to inspire you guys to have a think about it, how you can use them, how the best way you can use them, and be creative on how you do that. So what we've got here is the point. So it's the sharper point 1, and we're using the extra fine grit there, not the fine grit. What I've got there is a little setting there with some claws already up there. Now it's close to finishing, and I don't want to go back with emery and tidy it up, because when you go to emery, you invariably leave more marks than you're taking away, and you've got to get rid of those emery marks again. So I'll run this video, and that will explain some of that for you. So here we have the point. Now we have an ultra-fine point here being in the pink. When you need to get into very tight areas, you can taper this and profile it sharper again with a file. But just to save yourself making emery marks, a lot of the times when you clean up the emery, you'll end up making a line top and bottom as you pass the emery through. This is a better way to do it, so you can polish up quite quickly and get very, very close into the piece there. What can happen too is, as this wears down, it will match the profile of the piece you're polishing. So again, you can get very close, and we have no emery marks top and bottom as you would normally get with a piece of emery trying to do that. Plus with this as well, you can double it up and use the side profile, and you can just give yourself a quick shine on the side as well. So that needs a little bit more work, but you get the idea there. So there we go. So yes, become creative with that's what we're trying to say as well. Let's move on to the next one. Now the pin polisher, I didn't have one on me with the time I was doing the videos. So again, I've borrowed this from a YouTube guy, cut out sections. I've got references if you want to see the full videos on these guys, give them full credit for what they do. So he's using a pin polisher there, and you can extend the pin polisher so you can get longer access distance, and you can shorten it up and profile it to get into areas like engraving. So we'll just run that one for you. The minis too, what you can do is use them for piercing. So if you've got a wide angle piercing area, you can put it directly into the pierced section of your piece and tidy up all your saw marks again. As you can see, you can shorten the profile significantly and change it so you can get into wide engraving. The wider engravings tend to be a little bit messy because they are so wide, and that's a good way to clean those up. And extra, so some things you may not have thought of is some of the tool application and bangles, twisted wires. We'll run that. I use these to make tools a lot, so for polishing the points, so when you're making gypsy setting tools, burnisher, I use that too. So one of the other things you can utilise the silicone wheels for too is any edge that needs to be polished or cleaned up. For example, a lot of tools you get these days aren't dressed, and you'll find that they'll have, even though it's a curve there, there'll be a sharp edge and a sharp edge on the opposite side. This is a pair of ring bending pliers, and if you don't get rid of those edges, it can actually leave marks, significant marks in your piece. So what you can do is soften those edges with a coarser or medium silicone wheel. So hopefully you can see that. This particular wheel has been used a lot to do this, so that's why it's worn a groove. And that now has a softer edge and is less likely to mark your metal as you bend it. Some other things that people might forget to use is definitely cleanup. In particular, a twisted wire bangle. Sometimes it's very hard to get and clean up the joint itself. So what we can do is come back with a knife edge again, and where the joint is and you've soldered it, that's where you can clean up very easily to match the profile. So the same thing again, just tracking through the line of the wire, and that will help you clean up the solder joints. Again, you're a little bit lighter on the grit we're using. We can always go coarser if we need to. It's easy to remove metal and take it, put it on. And as you can see there, with that, you've filleted the joint with that piece, so it blends in quite nicely with the rest of the piece. Thank you for that. Now, one of the things you need probably to think about is, as you do this, is am I polishing or am I moving metal, or am I trying to do both? And that's going to help you to work out which grit you go for. So there's only 4 grits to choose from, really. So if you're moving metal, you definitely go for the white, if that's your own aim. If you're only final polishing and a slight tidy up, you go for the pink, which is the extra. And if you're somewhere in between, you start thinking, okay, I want to shine it, do I want to move metal? And you start tweaking between the black and the blue. So that's the biggest decision, really. The profiles are fantastic for nearly every job you do. At the end here, am I supposed to be doing this one, Pete?
No, I can take over from here, but we should just ask if there's any questions, Bill. So have you gone as far as you're going?
At this point, we could go further and further. This is really just to get you guys inspired to think about different ways you can do things. Now, these are very, very quick ways to quickly polish up. So if you've got market pieces, for example, that you're bringing out to take out the markets, rather than repolish because of a single tiny scratch, you can quickly grab one of these and the piece is ready for sale again in 2 minutes. If there's any questions, that would be fantastic.
I've got a comment. The video for the pinpoint did not play.
Oh, okay. So let's have a look. The pinpoint. So what I can do is I can rerun that one. It's only very, very short. So if everyone's right with that, I can quickly rerun that one right now. I think we've got time for that.
And I've got another question from Natalie when you're ready, Bill.
So there's the black pinpoint in there, and he's extended it to get into the inside of a ring. And what you can do is shorten that profile down by sliding it into the mandrel and shaping it, and then you can polish up engravings. As I said, large engravings tend to be a little bit messy, so you can clean those up with the pinpoints. Did that show that time? Yeah,
well, it did for me. So okay, Natalie has a question. How long would you get out of a piece?
For example, the black one there, the black barrel, I use for cleaning up my tools only. I've dedicated that for tools, and I've had that for about 2-3 years for that. The final ones you tend to go through quicker. So your pink and your blues, or especially your pink, are very soft, fine compounds. So you tend to chew them up a little bit more. So that's why you need to decide, am I trying to polish or am I trying to move metal? To use your pink, your ultra fine to move metal, you're just going to chew it up. So you actually need a bit of a combination of pieces to extend the life out of them. The white one, it's a very hard compound. It tends to last quite a long time. I would imagine, depending on what you're doing, you could easily get 100, 200 pieces out of a piece. Anything else?
That's all for the moment. So we should just put a shout out. Yeah, Natalie said, thank you. Here we go. I use grey. This is from Mary. I use a grey fine wheel for most of my finishing before polish. What grade does that match?
Okay, so there's different manufacturers out there making different silicon wheels, and depending on how they colour code them, it will be the grade. You just have to gauge. If you're using it and it's polishing only, it could be a fine, extra fine. If you're moving metal and you're getting marks, it's going to be the coarse medium. One of the other grey ones that we do have from another supplier, from Shofu, is a pumice wheel. So that's a grey, very fine one, and that's used for polishing up bezels around stones, for example. The claim to fame for the pumice wheels is that they don't mark stones. So you can polish up, and if you happen to slip onto your stone where you're cleaning the top edge of your bezel, you're not going to mark your stone. Having said that, that wouldn't be true for pearl. It wouldn't be true for amber. And you'd have to be a bit careful with some of the other stones, like the if you had an organic stone in there, coral or something like that. So organics, no.
No worries. Okay. Thanks. Now, we might just tell everyone about the kit that we have to offer everybody, Bill.
Yes. So as part of the webinar, we're offering to the webinar participants only a kit. The kit is covering, I'm just going to click through here and get the whole lot up. So the kit for you guys only is covering every single grit, every single piece in the Dedigo range that we stock. So it's a very comprehensive kit, this one. It will also include the mandrels you need to mount your square and your knife edge, and will include the 2mm mandrel for your pins as well. So you can experiment with this. It's a fantastic kit. You're saving over 30% from, if you bought these individually, it would cost you a small fortune of $142. Special for you guys is $96.13 plus GST. This is only for the webinar participants. It is great value and a great way to find out how you can benefit from these silicon wheels. I guarantee once you start using these, you will fall in love with them and you'll get your favourites. Obviously you do, and you'll move down that path. My favourite's the knife edge course is one of my favourites, and the barrels. I like the barrels for polishing up all my tools and ring shanks. I do a bit of casting, so it's a very quick way to clean up castings.
No worries. Bill, just to explain to everybody that we will be sending out an email after this webinar with the details of this offer, and also links to these slides which contain the videos. So that's that'll be a good resource for you. And also to explain that if you're interested in buying the kit, just go to the AJS website. You need to use the coupon code AJSTV1, and that'll be on the email as well. So you'll have all that information, and you'll get it for that price, and that's a limited time offer.
Yeah, so I hope everyone enjoyed that. Like I said, we're just touching on it a bit. There's so many more different things you can do. It's a bit hard to cover it all in half an hour, but experiment, have fun with it, and enjoy making jewellery.
So, Bill, we won't finish there because we have questions coming through, and excellent. We have one from Mary. So if you were to use these for tidy up after setting opal, would they mark the opal, as the grey fine wheel I use doesn't?
That's right. So the grey fine wheel sounds like it is a pumice, and that should not mark the opal as much as a silicon-based wheel. So you have to be careful with these for the organics and some of the opals, because they can mark them. If you're polishing up, what I would suggest in that case, if you're happy with your pumice wheel, your grey wheel, stay with it. If you've got some serious marks though, the pumice won't move it that quick. So you might consider going to a medium or a fine in the silicon and using a bit more care, or significant care, so you don't touch your opal as you go around. So the plus with these is if you tried to polish with a goat's hair, for example, or a cotton mop, they do splay out. It's very hard to keep them off a stone. Your profile wheels like your pumice that you've got and the silicone wheels that we're going through here today don't go out of line, and it's very easy to control the line. So quite often with the bezel settings at the school, we get the girls and the guys there to clean up their marks from setting with a medium, which is the black, and then tidy up with a fine and a pumice as well. No one's touched a stone yet and had any issues because it's a lot easier to control.
So a comment from Meg, she says the kit is perfect for her, so that's fantastic. And a question from Natalie, does a stand come with the kit?
Unfortunately, no, but we do have stands. It doesn't come with it because that would push up the kit price a little bit more. We're trying to keep the kit price down so it's easily accessible to you guys. So there's no stand in this. But if I can click back a little bit on my thing. And there we go. So that stand you can see in the video there is one of the stands that we sell as well. So they're available through AJS and online as well. I end up getting a few of those. I tend to collect everything. I think everyone does. And yeah, that's it. Sorry, it doesn't include it in the kit, unfortunately.
No problem. Natalie's asked, can we put a price in the email too? Natalie, is that for the stand? If you can just reply to that. Yeah, the stand. Okay. Perhaps we can come up with an offer for the stand as well, Bill.
Yeah, we'll go through that, and we'll incorporate a special price for you guys for the stand as well to put all those in. So yeah, good feedback. So we can add that part on as well as a special for anyone who wants to add a stand to it.
Excellent. Comment from Boo Books. Appreciate the webinar. That was good. So thank you everybody for your participation. Bill, you've done a great job. And you can see the sort of expertise that we have at AJS in store. This is all around the country. And we'll look forward to delivering our next webinar. So please stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, you'll get an email shortly with the details that I promised you relating to today's webinar. So a summary of the deal and also a link to that actual slideshow with the videos, etc. And thank you very much. Bill, any more from you?
Just appreciate everyone. The response to the first webinar is excellent. So really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm for the topic. And we hope to put more out there. I'll try and keep my hands out the road next time for the filming. And yeah, look forward to answering questions and keeping you guys on track for making beautiful jewelry. I'm a little bit passionate about it, so I'm glad that you guys share that enthusiasm too.
It comes across, Bill. Great job. Okay, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.